Factor Podcast.
What is up, college lacrosse fans? You are watching the 71st episode of the Lax Factor Podcast, and it is the first. It's a week 0 college lacrosse recap show. What we're going to do is we're going to break this up into two parts. Today, we're going to talk about the two ACC games, Air Force Duke and Colgate UNC. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the Hopkins, or not the Hopkins. We're going to talk about the Maryland and High Point game and the Lafayette and Penn State game, and then the Rutgers Quinnipiac game. So we'll get to those tomorrow. We're going to break this up every week now into two shows. We're going to do a Monday show talking about some games, and then a Tuesday show talking about more. Today, everything that we're getting in, we're going to do the Lax Factor Player of the Week. We're going to do Air Force Duke, Colgate UNC, Bellermine Utah, Detroit Mercy, and Jacksonville. And then we're going to talk D3, Carthage Hendricks, and Barry Salisbury. So those are the games we're going to talk about in today's episode. Before I get into that, I want to make sure that you hit like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. The easiest thing you can do, just hit the like button, just hit the thumbs up, just smash that for us, or share the podcast with your friends, share the video on your social media platforms. And as always, you can go to laxfactor.com. You can watch our videos there, listen to our audio podcast. You can buy swag, hats, t-shirts. We got like pullover hoodies and stuff like that. We have all sorts of stuff. But more importantly, just hit the like button and then share the podcast with others. As we get into this, the first thing I wanted to do was talk about the Lax Factor Player of the Week. And obviously, I think that this will be most people's Player of the Week if they were to pick one. Brandon Dodd from Air Force. He had 4 goals and 4 helpers. He had 4 goals and a dish in the second half as part of Air Force's come from behind win over Duke. It was a crazy game. I actually picked it as one of my upset alerts, and then I saw Joe Robertson wasn't playing early on, and I was like, ooh, that kind of gives Air Force an even better shot, because I think Joe Robertson's kind of the alpha on Duke's offense, or should be this year. From the start, it looked like Duke was going to roll, though. Duke comes out 5-0. They were up 6-1, and then with 2:44 left in the first half, they had a 9-5 lead. So I'm thinking, Duke may roll. Obviously, 5 goals isn't that bad, but Duke was in control most of that game, and Air Force was struggling. First play of the second half, though, Duke wins the faceoff, comes down. They try to force feed the crease, and there's a big double team hit by Jacksonville that results in a Duke turnover. Ball goes the other way, and who scores? Our man Dodd scores on a fast break goal to get it back to 9-6. Dodd strikes again shortly after on a question mark dodge up the right side. He kind of banged back and stuck it left-handed, question mark. And then it just went back and forth for a little while. We get to later in the game, and then Duke breaks the number one rule of stopping transition. Duke at this point had been up the whole game, and Air Force gets their first tie of the game on a fast break where Duke just failed to stop the ball. Long pole goal for Schlechtke for Air Force. I'm not sure if I got his name right, but that tied things up 12-12. Then the Falcons get their first lead of the game. It's Dodd's 4th goal of the game. The double came late. He buries it 13-12. Then we get the damn empty netter ball game 14-12 with 47.6 ticks left. And actually, I may have got that wrong. Dodd may have not scored the goal that put them up. He may have scored the empty netter that buried it. So don't quote me on that one. I might have that wrong. And then Duke got one back late in the game, 7 seconds left, but it was too late. The player to watch. Oh, and then keep in mind too, Air Force beats Duke, and Duke always loses one of these games early in the season. Last year it was High Point. In previous years, it was Air Force beating Duke early in the year. I want to say Duke has lost at home and maybe on the road to Air Force over the last 8 years or so. So this is a normal thing for Duke. And before we start saying, oh, the wheels are falling off, let's keep in mind, from what I understand, Duke doesn't scrimmage anybody. This is Duke's first outing against another team this spring. These early season games are their scrimmages, and they don't have that offensive alpha male, at least without Robertson on the offensive side of the ball. They're going to have to kind of figure things out. Nakai Montgomery, from what I understand, I mean, I watched the game, but I had people here, so I wasn't paying close attention to who was rolling on the midlines, but I see Nakai Montgomery had a big goose egg, so he didn't do much, if anything at all. So he hasn't developed as they hoped. Maybe he's hobbled. I'm not sure how that pans out, but Duke will figure this out. Duke is not they're not off the rails by any means. They always lose a game early, and I still think that Duke is probably, with Coach D and what he does to prepare his team slowly but surely, I think they're still a tournament team. So let's not freak out and think that it's going to completely fall off for Duke. And then another thing that may be a blessing in disguise with Robertson being out is a couple of guys are going to end up having to step up as long as he's gone. So Joey Manown, he went for 3 goals, 2 assists. Carpenter, 2 and 2. So they're both solid. They're known quantities. Cameron Bedour for Duke, junior midfielder, he went 3 and 1. So is he maybe one of the guys that's going to benefit from Manown being out and having to, kind of step up and fill the void and the points that he would normally put up? Turner Upgren, he looked rough for Duke. He only came up with 8 saves versus 14 goals against, so that's not going to be good enough, especially not in conference. They're going to have to figure that out in the cage. Is it going to be Upgren? Is he going to be able to step up and then fill this void in cage? Because there was a void in cage in this game, and it hurt Duke over the course of the second half as Air Force started to try to chip away at that lead and get back into it. For Air Force, Dodd was 4 and 4. Quincy Peen had himself a day, 4 goals and a helper. And the story of the day, I think, for Air Force, besides Dodd having a great day, is Brandon Host. Kid makes 17 saves versus 13 goals against for the Falcons at Duke. Very key in their victory. So this was a hell of a game. Great game to watch. It was... at points, I was just like, I was kind of half paying attention because I thought it was over, and I like to yap. Obviously, I like to yap. So ended up being a hell of a game. But let's all be reserved here. Duke, it's not falling off for Duke yet. Let's not freak out. The next game of the day was Colgate coming to playing North Carolina down at North Carolina. Admittedly, I didn't see this coming. I had picked the Penn State Lafayette game as my bloodbath. That turned out to be wrong. And the bloodbath of the weekend, I think, really was Colgate and UNC. UNC beats them 19-6 is what I'm showing here. So, yes, I thought that Colgate was going to be capable of playing better, but I'm also not surprised that UNC was able to beat them up. UNC looked tough all over the field. They came out beating them down from the beginning, came right out one of the early Colgate possessions, forced a turnover, beat them up on the ground ball, went back up the other way. Fitting that Chris Gray got things started for UNC, scores their first 2 goals. He ends up with 4 goals and 2 assists on the day. So he has a 6-point day in his opening game for the Tar Heels. Pleasantly surprised, actually, with how Nicky Solomon played and how they gelled together. Solomon goes for 3 goals and 2 helpers. He dodged well. He carried well. He fed well. He even scored an off-ball goal. I forget who had that assist. It may have been Perry or Anderson. But Nicky Solomon, he looked really good. William Perry, 3 goals and a helper. Brian Cameron, 2 goals and a helper. Justin Anderson, a hat trick. All very good, all known quantities. Well, at least Perry and Anderson are. And I had said when I kind of previewed North Carolina that they had all of the pieces, especially offensively, to be a killer team and a very dangerous team offensively. And then you add Gray to that mix, and they've got everything they need. They've got midfielders out top that can both dodge and snipe, spot shoot. So these attackmen like Solomon and Gray, they can go to the rack, and if teams have to pay too close attention to them, they're going the midfielders up top are going to feast into step down shots and things like that. Caton Johnson, 9 saves against just 2 goals, so he looked really good in cage. Patrick Lyons, a 6'4" senior pole, he forced 2 turnovers, picked up 5 ground balls. I think he actually forced one of the turnover in one of the clips that I've already showed as we're sitting here rambling. Great effort all around out of UNC. It'll actually be interesting to see now what Syracuse does with Colgate on Friday, as Colgate's going to play Syracuse in the Dome this upcoming Friday. So maybe will they come out and try to kind of get their second win in the Dome? Will they come out, just balls to the wall, fired up because they just got their butts whooped by UNC? It will be interesting to see. But one thing for sure, UNC they're confident, they're going to play confident, and they are ready to make noise in the ACC. I'll also do a video here for any ACC people that follow ACC. I was at the Yale Syracuse scrimmage yesterday as well. So I'll put a video for that up probably Wednesday, because I want to get a good recap show up for you tomorrow where we go through High Point, Maryland, and the Lafayette and Penn State game with all the other ones we want to talk about. Next game, Bellarmine in Utah. They go out to face Utah. Utah kicked off the 2019 season last year against Vermont. This year, they get the nightcap game. I think this was the last game played on Saturday night. Last year when they met, Utah edged Bellarmine by a goal. This year, thanks to a big outing from Colin Burke and Jimmy Perkins, the final was 16-10 Utah. Perkins, he's a guy, he transferred in and played last year. I forget where he was. I want to say he may have been at Bobby Moe. I'm going to mix that up. But anyway, Perkins transferred in. He hadn't played for a year because he had an injury last year. I felt he was going to be one of the breakout players in D1. I felt he was going to end up being Utah's leading scorer, and that didn't pan out. I think he ended up their third leading scorer. He had a solid year for a good first-year team, but he underachieved, I think, even probably for what he was hoping he was going to do, considering the offensive talent he is. He puts up 4 goals in this game, though. He went 24-7 last year is what Perkins did. So he goes 4 goals, great win, great start for him. Colin Burke, a transfer from Fairfield. He didn't play last season. He put up 17 goals and 23 assists for Fairfield in 2018. He transfers to Utah, gets to play in 2020, and he made good use of that transfer. He goes for 2 goals and 4 helpers in his first game as a Ute and helping them get this win. Josh Stout, everyone's favorite MCLA player turned Division I NCAA player. He goes 2-2 on the day, which Stout was a goal-scoring machine last year. He scored 43 goals, and I think he only had 5 helpers last year. So he goes 2-2 in this game, and the kid is fast. The kid has wheels, an insane first step, an insane second, third, fourth, fifth step if you're trying to guard him. So Stout had a good game. Bright spot for Bellarmine, their backup keeper. Their starting keeper, he got roughed up a little bit. They bring in their backup keeper. I think the score was 10-4, 10-3 at the half. And Ian Riley, their backup goalie, he stopped 11 shots versus 6 goals. So, hey, that's not too bad. So that was a bright spot for Bellarmine. But in the end, Utah looked good, and it looks like they are going to continue to advance and become a better team here in their second season at the Division I level. Another good game over the weekend, and this was one of the games I had said would probably be good. I think I did pick Jacksonville at home, but Detroit Mercy, they go down to Jacksonville. They pick up a big win on the road, 15-14 against Jacksonville. Tough loss at home. I knew it was going to be a good game, and I was rooting for Jacks because of Galloway and all that crap, but Detroit Mercy had a nice squad coming back, so I knew it was going to end up being a pretty fairly matched game. Jacksonville, they hold a 10-7 lead at the end of the first half, and it was a pretty high scoring first half, 10-7. If you were betting on this game, you should have taken the over. Detroit Mercy, they come out and score the first 4 goals of the second half to take their first lead, 11-10. 4 different players scored over that third quarter run, and this became a game of runs. Jacksonville starts the third quarter out. They win the third quarter with 4 goals in a row. So by the end of the third, it was 11-10. And Jacksonville had their lead. To start the fourth, Jacksonville, they go on their own run. They score 4 goals over the start, to start the fourth quarter out. Evan Tyler had 2 assists over that run. So Jacksonville takes the lead back about halfway through the fourth quarter, 14-11. But in a game of runs, now it's Detroit Mercy's turn. And in this game, it was whoever had the last run was going to win the game. And it proved to be Detroit Mercy. Wait for it. 4-goal run they have from about the 8.27 mark or so. They tie it up with 5:04 left off a Kyle Waters goal, and then the game winner, also scored by Waters at 1:46 in the fourth quarter, 1-goal lead. That's the ball game. Jacksonville did make it interesting. I believe Jacksonville won the ensuing faceoff. Detroit Mercy got a slashing penalty on that faceoff. They end up turning the ball over on the man-up play and end up getting a shot off, after scrums ensued and the ball, Detroit Mercy got the ball back. Jacksonville, Jack Dolan, he ends up getting a shot off with 2 seconds left, and Logan Shamblin, the goalie for Detroit Mercy, he makes a save. Ball game again. So it was a game that was, hotly contested and went back and forth the whole game. Detroit Mercy was never out of it, and they were the ones that ended up putting it away. So Jacksonville, they have to shore that up. I know that was one of the things in their scrimmage against Navy and UNC that Galloway was glad to see, was that they were able to jump out to a huge lead on UNC and then hold it. And then against Navy, they ended up going down and then came back. Apparently now what they have to work on is giving up leads, because they end up with a 14-11 lead going into the fourth quarter. No. They end up with a 14-11 lead about halfway through the fourth quarter and just couldn't hold on to it and couldn't keep that lead, couldn't keep that interesting for them. So Jacksonville drops a tough one at home, and that was one of the things we talked about. They were going to have to handle their non-conference business as they try to get themselves into their tournament and maybe into the NCAA tournament. So not a good start, but hey, it's first game of the year. It's only week 0, not even week 1 yet, week 0, so they'll be okay. Let's check into some Division III action. We had Carthage and Hendricks. I think they kicked all of Division III off on Saturday. Carthage ends up beating Hendricks pretty handily, 16-4 at Hendricks. Noah Lindner, he dropped a 10-point game on Hendricks. He goes 7 goals, 3 helpers. He was 5-2 by halftime, and then went on to score another 2 goals and an assist over the second half. Kid also forced 3 turnovers on the day, which was interesting. Kyle Guthrie had 13 saves in cage for Carthage on just 3 goals against, so it was not a very well or equally matched game or whatnot. Carthage smoked Hendricks despite Elias Ramos going 17-23 from the faceoff dot for Hendricks. So that's a bright spot for Hendricks that their faceoff guy was able to win 17 of 23 draws. The bad side, they weren't able to parlay that into actual points. And then the only other D3 game I was going to talk about, because there was only a couple of them, was Barry and Salisbury. And I found this matchup interesting because I watched this game last year and Barry hung tight. And I want to say Salisbury beat Barry 8-6 or something like that. I think it ended up being a close game. And this year, Salisbury got revenge, housing Barry 27-3. 15 players netted goals for Salisbury. Cross Ferrara and Griffin Maroney led the offense with 4 goals and 2 assists apiece. And Van Parker followed close behind with 3 goals and an assist, but it was a bloodbath from the beginning. So that's a huge difference. They play a 2 or 3 goal game last year against each other, and this year 27-3. So it was just an absolute murking, an absolute bloodbath. So what is the plan for tomorrow? The plan for tomorrow's show: we are going to rip through and do High Point versus Maryland. We are going to rip through and do Penn State and Lafayette with highlights. And then we're also going to talk about Quinnipiac, Rutgers, a couple other D1 games. And then we'll dive into one of the D2 matchups that I wanted to talk about. And then it'll probably get into another D3 matchup for Wednesday's show. We are going to go through, show some highlights from the Syracuse and Yale scrimmage, talk a little bit about both of those teams as they get ready to play next weekend. And then we will, come Thursday, we'll put out the weekend preview show where we will preview Cuse Colgate and then a bunch of other games that are being played on Saturday and Sunday across the Division I landscape. So that is it. So we have a show for you every day this week. We will have a follow-up recap show where we talk about the Big Ten games. We will have another show on Wednesday where we talk about Yale-Cuse scrimmage. We will have another show on Thursday where we talk about all of the upcoming games on the weekend. And then Friday, we'll do the daily podcast where I ramble about just random stuff. And then Saturday, we get to watch more lacrosse again. Super Bowl, who cares? College lacrosse has started. NFL football is now over for all of us. I kind of have a little bit of a food hangover, but I think that I will survive. So as always, be sure, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you want to support us beyond that, go to laxfactor.com. You can watch our videos there, listen to our audio podcasts there, and you can get swag, hats, shirts and crap, and mugs and whatever else. So as always, thank you for watching, and I will be back tomorrow to talk about the Big Ten games and show you some highlights from those as well. Thank you.